Y'all can be seated. And I'll join with Ed, say good morning, welcome to Community Christian. And if you're new here today, my name's Jason, and I'm also one of the pastors on staff at the church. I'm also a licensed mental health counselor. And as you have already heard, we started a series. We call it a series. It's really just one long message broke up into three parts. Today's part two of that one long message. But we're talking about how to live with anxiety. And I'm going to do something to sort of kick this thought off that we're going to deal with today that I'll just go ahead and admit may be a little bit of oversharing, so get ready. I'm going to let you into my head for a little bit, which is always a scary thing. But I want to do that because I think it might be helpful, because my hunch is that you're going to relate to this. Most people probably will relate to this, because I think we all kind of have this thing. And I have this thing. And it often happens to me in the middle of the night. I don't know why, but that's when it tends to show up most often. In the middle of the night, I wake up for whatever reason, and immediately, before I even realize I'm awake, something pops into my head, and it's inside of my brain. And instead of trying to describe it to you and what it is, I'm going to just let you hear it for a little bit, okay? Again, sorry, but this is what goes on inside of my head in the middle of the night if it were an audible voice. This is my best attempt at giving you the flavor of it, okay? So here we go. I wonder what time it is. Is it worth going back to sleep? What if I don't fall back asleep? What if I'm sleepy all day at work today? I have so much to do. I still have not finished that sermon on anxiety yet, and I have no idea what I'm going to say. What day is it? Oh, it's Tuesday. Not going to have time to work on it today. Too much going on in the day. I wonder if that client who's struggling last week is even going to show up and see me today. Oh, great. Now that song I heard on the radio is in my head. I didn't even like that song. Why is that song in my head? I've been laying in this position all night long. If I don't turn over soon, I'm probably going to be sore in my shoulder in the morning. Okay, so if my first appointment is at 10, maybe I can sleep in a little later since I'm losing all this sleep now. No, I can't do that. Then I'm going to be more tired. Crap, there's that stupid song again. Wait, is the trash coming tomorrow or is it Thursday? Because we had a snow day last week and they're off schedule. I better just put it out tonight in case I forget. I hate this song. Anybody relate to that? Good. It's not just me. I feel so much better, right? But there's this stream of consciousness. You ever notice that? It just kind of exists inside of your head, and it's so hard sometimes to turn that thing off. And it can just go on like that for hours sometimes. And I'll confess to you something that I've discovered. When I sat down and decided I was going to write that paragraph out for y'all and let you know what goes on inside of my head, and then I read it back to myself, I was exhausted. I mean, I thought to myself, no wonder you feel so worn down sometimes. No wonder you feel so defeated. If you spend a night like that, man, that's just so exhausting. So as we said before, we started last week talking about anxiety. And what we're doing is we're looking at this from a biblical, Jesus-centered perspective, but we're also not ignoring all of the science and the research that's been done on how to manage anxiety. We're bringing those two together. And what I just illustrated for you in that thought inside of my head, that little stream of consciousness, it really is what anxiety can do to your mind. And we know this. Once anxiety does that into your mind long enough, it starts to take a toll on your body. It's an amazing thing about the human body. What you think about affects how your body responds. And it can actually do damage to your physical health. And then, of course, when it starts doing that, it will bleed over into other parts of your life. And it'll start to affect how you respond at your workplace and your relationships. And it just starts affecting everything. But basically, when it comes down to it, what anxiety does to you is this. See, here's what I know about pretty much all of us. You got a lot going on in your life. I got a lot going on in my life. And because we have so much going on in our lives, we often walk around feeling as if everything in our lives is just pretty much out of control, and I can't quite get my hands around it, and I can't make it work out exactly the way I think it ought to work out. And then anxiety comes along, and here's what anxiety says. Yeah, you got a lot going on. And yeah, you feel like you're out of control of it. And yeah, you think you can't control your own life. Yes, you can. You can control your life. You can. Here's all you have to do. Just start thinking about it. A lot. Take all of that stuff that you are concerned with and you can't get control over, put it in your brain and roll it around. Swirl it around your mind, think about it, preoccupy yourself with it, ruminate on it, lie awake in bed, and you just turn those thoughts over and over and over and over and over again about what you think the future ought to look like and how you can take control over the future, and that'll fix everything. That's what anxiety says. But it's not true. The problem with the way that we tend to do life is it's like playing a game of whack-a-mole. You remember whack-a-mole? That game at the carnival where, they put all those little holes in front of you and then the mole's heads would pop up and your job was to hit it with the hammer, right? And so it'd pop up and you'd hit it with the hammer. And then after you hit that one would pop up again and you'd hit that one. Well, while you were hitting that one, another one would pop up that you didn't even see. And by the time you saw it, it was gone. And then you try to hit that and there's nothing there. And then there's another one that pops up and you try to hit that one. And it goes on and on and on and on. This is what anxious thinking does inside your brain. As soon as you think you've got one problem whipped, you've got your mind around it, you know exactly what to do, I am in control of that thing, well, there's another one and it pops up. And you don't have control over that one. And it just keeps going and going and it feels like it never ends. And then, here's what you tell yourself. You say, I don't like the way this feels. I don't like the way this works. I don't like what anxiety's doing to me. I know what I'll do. I'll just stop. I'll stop worrying. So I'm just going to stop. How's that working? I'll just stop. I'll try really, really hard. I'll grit my teeth and I'll use my willpower and I'll just try really, really hard to stop worrying. And that doesn't work because trying really hard not to worry most often makes you worry more because the fact that you can't stop worrying and then you worry about that. Feeling anxious yet? Someone told me last week when I got done talking, they were like, I think you made me feel more anxious by talking about anxiety. I said, well, good. That was my goal anyway. No, it wasn't. But it just makes you feel anxious when you talk about it because it's a circular kind of thing. It just never ends. It puts you in that state, right? It puts you in that uneasy state. And that's the point. Well, maybe so far I've convinced you that the cycle of thinking that we often use to manage our anxiety is not helping us. So maybe we're ready to get a different solution. Maybe we're willing to look at it from a different angle and come up with some better ideas. So today, as I promised last week, we're going to get super practical. So this is the part of the three-part message that is the practical part, okay? So I'll just warn you for some of you that really care about this kind of thing, or maybe you came for the very first time to our church and you're expecting us to read a Bible passage and me to break it down and then go through it. We're not doing that today. In fact, I'm not even going to read the Bible today. I did that last week. I'm going to do that next week. So we do read the Bible around here, so you came on the wrong day. But this is the middle part where we're going to talk about strategies and practicalities on getting our minds around this anxiety thing. And so I'm going to start with the quote that we looked at last week. It sort of becomes kind of like the basis of what we've been doing. John Ortberg says, the way you learn how to live without anxiety is by learning how to live with anxiety. And we touched on this a little bit last week. Anxious thoughts, worrying, they are facts of life. You are never going to be completely rid of anxious feelings and anxious thoughts. And actually, if you look at it that way, it can be a good thing. See, feeling pressure to do something or noticing warning signs in your life that there may be something you should be concerned about, or maybe something is harmful to you and you need to take action against it or protect yourself. This is a hardwired thing that God put in your body and brain to protect you. And it's a good thing. It's there to motivate you. It's there to keep you safe. So feeling anxious is not the problem. That can be a good thing when it prompts you to take action and get things done in your life. The problem is when anxiety is allowed to take over your life and prevent you from living a healthy, well-connected life. So the goal for us, we're not trying to eliminate anxious feelings. We're trying to learn how to leverage them to our advantage. We don't want them to harm us or interfere with normal, healthy life. So I'm going to teach you this one little phrase that we're going to unpack for the rest of our time together that's going to get, hopefully, some traction on this. When it comes to anxiety, the goal is own it, don't enthrone it. You own it, you don't enthrone it. So when it comes to worry, when it comes to anxious thoughts, you want to own those anxious thoughts, you want to own those worries without allowing them to be enthroned in your life. In other words, I control my thoughts and I don't let my thoughts control me. Now, this is what I often call putting separation between you and your inner life, okay? There's a difference between me and what I think about. There's a difference between me and what I feel. You are not what you think. You are not what you feel. A thought, an emotion, it is not something you are, it is something you have. And if that's true, then your thoughts don't have to have the last word. Your emotions don't have to drive all of your decisions because they are not God. They can help inform you if something needs attention, if something's wrong that needs to be made right. They can be very helpful, but they don't get the final authority on who you are or what you should do. They do not have to sit on the throne of your life and determine everything about who you are and what you do. And see, for us who are Jesus followers, we are Jesus people. At some point in your life, if you're a Jesus person, you decided, Jesus is on the throne of my life. Jesus is in control of who I am and who I'm not and what I do and what I don't do. Jesus is King. Jesus sits on the throne, and so he gets to tell me all of that stuff. He gets to define. If he says I am something, I am that. If he says I am not something, I am not that. Because he is the authority of my life, and he is right. About what? Everything. And whatever he says goes in my life. But see, when I allow anxious thinking, when I allow anxious feelings to sit on the throne, I am often led away from Jesus and what he says is right. And I am led astray into unhealthy patterns of thinking, which then leads to unhealthy patterns of living. So, here's what we're going to do. Before we get to the practical part, we're going to sit with that for a minute. We're going to take a moment and figure out what it looks like and what it feels like to enthrone Jesus in our hearts and minds. And we're going to do that through a time of worship. So I've invited Ed and our band to lead us in that.
The good news, or the gospel, is that Jesus is King. He's King over the universe. He's currently ruling over creation. He is the King of all kings. And he is at work in this world to actively hold all things together. An early church leader named Paul wrote it like this: in him all things hold together. Jesus is the center of everything, and Jesus is actively holding everything together. That includes me. That includes you. That includes our lives that we sometimes feel like are barely holding together. We can have peace in this life not because I have everything going the way I want it to go or that everything's moving the way it is, but because Jesus is the center of all things, and he is actively holding everything together. He is above all, and he is at work for my good and his glory in everything. And so even when I suffer loss, even when there is hurt and there is disappointment and there is anxiety and there is frustration, I don't have to know that I'm in control. I know that Jesus is the King. That's the good news, right? He is in charge of everything, and he is at work. And all the proof that I need of that is that Jesus went to the cross and gave his life for the good of every human being. And the worst thing that could ever happen, the worst conditions for any person on this planet, the worst thing happened to the very best person that ever lived. The author of life who held everything together, the source of hope and joy and goodness and all that is at work in this world. Jesus died. But 3 days later, by his own power, it was revealed that it was a part of God's plan that Jesus, by his death, would put death to death by his own power, resurrection. And so, each week we come together to celebrate that central event of Christianity. The good news is that Jesus is King over all things, including death. And so we honor his sacrifice by taking the elements that he set aside. When you came in, hopefully you got a little packet that looks like this. If you didn't, they're right outside these side doors. And if you want to participate with us, you can go get them now to participate. If you're not sure about anything I'm talking about, or you're not sure you believe this, you don't have to participate. But Jesus took simple elements like this, juice to represent his blood that was shed for us, and bread to represent his body that was given for us. And he invited us to eat every time we're together to remember the central event. Jesus is king. He's king over everything and actively at work. So if you're not sure about all of that, I invite you, you don't have to participate or fake like you do. You can just maybe spend this time in quiet and ask God to make himself real to you, so that can be the foundation of your life. And then after a moment we take to honor Jesus in this way, our band's going to lead us in singing a song of praises to Jesus for who he is. Let's remember him now.
Amen. You can be seated. So, how do we own our anxiety, and how do we not enthrone it? Well, since I know some of you really like memory devices and you really like letters and things of that nature, I'm going to take the word own, O-N-O-W-N, and we're going to take it apart, and we're going to use each one of those letters to give you a step you can take anytime you find yourself in that stream of consciousness, death spiral of anxious thinking. So you start with O. O stands for I observe. Like I mentioned earlier, there's this voice inside everybody's head. It's running nearly all the time. In fact, in his book, The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer says this. He says, all of us have an ongoing mental dialogue going on inside our heads all the time. Have you ever stopped to wonder why it's there? How does it decide what to say and when to say it? Why does it say one thing and not another? How much of what it's saying is actually true or even important? And if you're doubting that you have one of these, and right now you're arguing with me about having that voice, that's the voice, okay? You found it. Congratulations. But here's the good news about all of that. And I've mentioned this before. We as human beings have a unique superpower that no other living creature on earth has. Human beings have the ability to think about our own thoughts. We can analyze what we're thinking about. We can separate ourselves and look at it objectively. We have the ability to think about our thoughts. We don't just run on instinct all the time, every moment. We really can observe. We really can analyze that voice that's running through our minds all the time. And observing means I get to step away from it. I get to step back. I get some distance. I become aware of what it is, and I work to just understand it. See, whenever you don't put distance between you and your inner thoughts and you and your emotions, you will start to believe, and then you will start to act as if that's you, that you are your thoughts, you are your emotions. And we know this is not true, but we just don't think about it this way. You are more than your thoughts. You are more than your emotions. And this ought to be some good news for some of you, what I'm about to say, because this is going to take a whole lot of shame away from a lot of us. You don't control all the emotions and thoughts that pop into your head. I say this to clients all the time. Emotions are a lot like standing in the ocean and then letting the waves hit you. You don't control the waves. You don't control the power of them. You don't control the frequency. They just come. Now, you have some strategy you can use to manage it, but you don't have complete control over all the emotions you feel. And see, when you sit in that for a moment and you recognize that that's true, that gives you permission to stop beating yourself up and condemning yourself for everything you think and every emotion you feel. It's not about you. And be honest with yourself. Have you ever done that? You ever beat yourself up? Ever said some things about yourself to yourself, about the things that you're thinking, about the things that you're feeling? I say this all the time to clients. You would never treat your best friend the way you treat yourself. You would never say the things you say to you to your best friend. Sometimes your own worst enemy, you wouldn't say those things. So how about let's be our best friend for a little bit and stop condemning yourself for what it is that you feel. See, this is why putting distance between you and your thoughts and emotions is so important, because when you do that, you can observe them for what they are. And you find there's no guilt here. That's not me. There's no shame in this. because that's not me. That's just a voice that's running through my head, trying to get me to think and do some things. That's just anxiety. That's just emotion. And I can sit separate from that. So you get some separation, and you observe the voice. You listen to it. And then, the W stands for, you just welcome it on in. And a lot of people will be like, I don't know if that's smart, you know? That sounds really odd. I mean, and it does. It does kind of sound a little bit counterintuitive. I get that. But when you observe the anxious thoughts and you observe the negative emotions, the next step is you just let them in. You just let them come sit with you. It's like when somebody knocks on your door. Knock on the door, you come to the door, I'll go, oh, hi, anxiety. See that you're here today. I expected you to show up. Come on in, have a seat on the couch. Give me what you got. Tell me what it is. What do you want to say? And you just kind of listen to it. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, this guy's lost it. I was supposed to get rid of my anxiety. He's bringing it in the house. Yes, that's a part of it. I'm supposed to welcome it and escort it into my life. I'm supposed to sit with it. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but can we at least admit something while we're sitting here together and we're all adults? You've been trying to do it the other way. How's that working for you? You've been trying to avoid it. You've been trying to run from it. You've been trying to numb it. Some of y'all have been medicating your emotions for years. You've been using substances so that you wouldn't have to feel your emotions. And that ain't working. So how about we try something different? How about we sit with them for a moment? And a lot of us are scared to do that because we've got the idea that if I sit with my emotions, they'll destroy me. Emotions are temporary. Think about it. You've never had an emotion in your life that you're currently still having right now. They come and they go. But pushing away or avoiding your negative thoughts and your emotions, it's asking your mind to do something that it cannot do. Think about it this way. It makes it worse. It's like me saying, don't think about pink elephants. What'd you just do? You just thought about a pink elephant. And then no matter how hard you try, you're still thinking about it right now. You're wanting to get it out of your head. It's not working. No? You cannot simply will away all your worries and will away your anxieties by sheer willpower. I'll go another step further. Fighting against anxiety the way most of us choose to do it inside of our own minds instead of observing it and then welcoming it is mistreatment of your own mind. Michael Singer says this. I'm going to read a quote from his book again, and it's a little bit longer, so stick with me, but this is so true. He says, if you mistreat an animal, it will become afraid. And this is what has happened to your mind. You have mistreated it. You have given it a responsibility that is incomprehensible. Stop for a moment and see what you have given your mind to do. You say to your mind, I want everybody to like me. I don't want anyone to speak badly of me. I want everything I say and everything I do to be acceptable and pleasing to everybody. I don't want anybody to hurt me. I don't want anything to happen that I don't like. And I want everything to happen that I do like. Then you said, now mind, you go figure out how to make every one of those things a reality, even if you have to think about it day and night. And of course your mind said, I'm on the job. I will work on that constantly. That is so convicting, isn't it? Because I do that all the time. Maybe you can relate. I put my mind to work to bring everything under my control. I put my mind to work to make everything work out. I send my mind to go make wrong things right according to what I think is right and what I think is best. And the truth is, my mind can't do none of that. It never could. But boy, does it try. And in the process, my mind wears me out and frustrates me trying to do something that it cannot do. See, when you send your mind to do that task and you do it for long enough, you know where that leads you? It leads to despair and hopelessness. Because again, you can't do it. This is why anxiety and depression are cousins. You spend enough time in that type of thinking, and you'll start to realize real soon, there's no hope in this. This is not working. And then you lose hope, and you get despairing, and then depression takes hold. But there is someone who can bring all things under control. There is someone who can make everything work out. There is someone who makes wrong things right. But he ain't me. And he's not up here in my head. He's not my thoughts. He's not my brilliant ideas. See, no wonder you can't find peace. No wonder we don't find. And isn't that what you want? Isn't that what everybody wants? We just want peace. Spoiler alert, that's what we're going to talk about next week, so y'all come on back. It's going to be good. But for now, don't give your mind something that it's impossible for it to do. Don't fight against your negative thoughts and emotions. Welcome them on in. Say, come on in, anxiety. I know you're there. Come on, sit down. Tell me what you got. But before you speak, one thing. You are not me. You don't get to tell me exactly what to do. You're not on the throne of my life, because that seat, that's taken. You don't get to say who I am. You don't get to tell me what I do. You don't get to tell me what I'm not. Someone else gets that role. See, most of us act like anxiety, if we just sit with it, is going to destroy us. Anxiety only has power over you that you give it. If you put anxiety on the throne of your life, oh yeah, it will have power over you. Many of us know that. But if you reserve the throne for Jesus, anxiety gets to say whatever it wants to. It can just talk. And that's fine. You can talk all you want. The king has something to say too. And you will remember that you are in the palm of his loving, gentle hand. And in his hand, you're safe. You're okay. Let anxiety do its best. You're okay. You're safe. So you observe it. You welcome it in. You let it talk. And then finally, you name it. Now, this is going to seem really silly. If you thought welcoming is silly, this is going to be even more silly. But did you know there was a research project at UCLA just recently? And it was fascinating when I first read it. They had two groups of people, and they were measuring inside of their bodies what anxiety and fear felt like and how it affected their lives. So they put them on these monitors, they hooked them up to devices, and they measured things like heart rate, muscle tension, mental and physical stress, all the signs that people get anxious, okay? And they wanted to study and see how high it went. So in order to get them to feel fear, they brought them into this room, both groups separately. And inside of the room was one of the biggest, hairiest tarantula spiders you've ever seen. And it was out on the table, okay? And they measured how everybody responded. And of course, as you can imagine, the subjects experienced enormous amounts of anxiety within their bodies. So then they took them out of the room. And in two separate groups, they went to one group and they said, okay, before we go back in there, here's what we want you to do. We want you all to get together and we want you to name the spider. Like, come up with a story about it. Just make up what it's been through in its life and what its family might look like and give it a name. And then the other group, they didn't say anything. They just said, all right, we're going to do this again. And they brought them back in. Now, you probably know where this is going, don't you? The group who named the spider, when they walked in the second time, experienced lower blood pressure, slower heart rate, slower breathing rates than the other group did. Their fears were actually lessened by giving their fear a name. So what does that tell us? Well, it says that once you've observed your anxious thoughts and you've let it sit at the table, the next important step is you need to give that thing a name. You need to identify exactly what those thoughts and emotions are. What are they saying to you? Because naming your negative thoughts, naming your negative emotions, once again, it's a way to further distance yourself from it and put it in its proper place. Because when it has a name, it's easier for you to not put it on the throne of your life. Because who wants that on a throne? So you listen to your anxious thoughts. You give them a voice. You listen to what they're saying. Feel those negative emotions because they will not kill you. They do not have that kind of power over you. I say this all the time. One of the key things that I talk to my clients about is I encourage to give their anxiety a voice. And we actually let the anxiety talk. What's that voice inside your head? What's it saying? Bring it into the room. Sit it in a chair. Let it talk. But see, this is so key for Christ followers. This is the process that your enemy hates. See, you taking all of that stuff that's inside of you that you don't want to tell anybody, that you're thinking, that you're feeling, and you let it out and you bring it from darkness into light, oh, the enemy hates that. Because he knows if we can get that out of you and bring that dark stuff into the light, light does its job. And light dispels darkness. And sometimes when that stuff comes out into the light, the moment you hear it, the moment you say it out loud, the moment you give it its name, you start to realize, well, how powerless it is and how untrue it is. And when you hear it, you say things like, oh, so that thought that I've been thinking or that anxiety that I've been going through every night, I know what that is. That's insecurity right there. I don't feel safe right now. Or that thing that's plaguing my brain, that's just my inadequacy. Or that thing that I've been worried about, that's the hurt that someone gave me. That's betrayal. That's bitterness. Or that's jealousy. That's just jealousy. That's guilt. I did something and I'm ashamed. See, when you give it a name, it loses its power. And it also reinforces one more time to you, that's not me. Because the king has some things to say about that stuff. There's a tool that I often encourage people to use because I find that a lot of us, we're not comfortable with emotional language. We just don't have the words sometimes to give it a name. And so there's a tool that I encourage a lot of folks to use. It's called the feelings wheel. You can get it right there on your phone. You just go to feelingswheel.com, and it looks a lot like that. And I know you can't read all those words on the screen, but basically how it works is this, is you start in that middle circle. And what you'll find in that middle circle are emotional words that 5-year-olds usually have. Sad, happy, angry. And everybody knows what that feels like. But then I encourage people, once you identify what you're feeling in the moment, go out to the outer circles because they link to things. And as you go to the outer circle, you'll start to get more and more specific about what it is that you're feeling. And you'll get a name for that thing. And once you identify that name, I'm telling you, there's a power in it, especially when you say it out loud to another person. When you give that thing a name, you call it precisely what it is, there will be a shift in your mind. There will be a shift sometimes even in your body. And I've just come to believe that shift that we feel in that moment as Jesus people, it is the gift of the Holy Spirit living inside of us, speaking truth to our hearts. When you take your thoughts and emotions off of that throne, the King will speak. He'll speak through you. And when the King speaks, he speaks life and truth and grace and what you ultimately want. We'll talk about it next week. He'll speak peace to your life. But we must own our anxiety, not enthrone it. And I know that's not easy. You're not going to do that when you walk out of the door here. I get that. Okay? This is a long, drawn-out process for most people. And we don't need to do this alone. None of us do. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs professional help. That's not what I mean. Some do. But we need help. We need encouragement. And we need the patience that comes from other people, brothers and sisters who are in the fight with us. And we can speak these things out loud to one another. And see, you can finally live without anxiety when you finally learn how to live with it. And the way you live with it is through the help of your Heavenly Father, through His presence. And His presence is most powerfully felt in His community. So that's how we learn to live with anxiety. So today, while we end this, I'm going to give us some time. We're going to just think about what might that look like for you? What might your next step be to live with anxiety in the presence of our God and with others? Ed's going to lead us in that.